Started. Yeah, we should be fine. So welcome everyone to our 36th Workplace Ninja User Group Netherlands webinar again. Something we actually started at the beginning of the pandemic, almost 2 years ago. And we have been continuing doing that. We are working on hosting events on premises again. And of course, we'll inform you once we know more about that. But you can expect one to take place on short notice in the Netherlands, of course. Yeah, one of the advantage of actually doing virtual meetings, even though yeah, we're still, I think we like to meet each other face to face, is the fact that we are able to actually attract speakers from around the world. And actually having Jesper today is a good example of that, because yeah, driving all the way to the Netherlands was not an option, but Jesper was yeah, into actually presenting for us in a virtual meeting. So welcome, Jesper. You can introduce yourself later on once your session starts. I have a few slides I want to share with all of you. Let's get that over with so that you can actually watch the session where you're for here. Watch the session of Jesper. So his session will be about Endpoint Analytics and Proactive Remediation. Well, very interesting if you ask me, and I will definitely watch myself as well. There's always something to learn on that front. Of course, a big thanks to our sponsors. Without sponsors, we are not able to do any events or organizing it. So big thanks to them. You can find us on social media. So if you want to mention our user group, please use the hashtag WPNinjasNL. So that's us. And of course, we are part of a bigger network within Europe, and the Workplace Ninja user groups, which are in more countries as well. We have some upcoming events coming up. Of course, yeah, our very own Workplace Ninja Global Summit, which takes place in September 12th until September 14th in Switzerland. Yeah, you can still buy tickets for that event. The sessions are being announced as we speak. So if you follow social media or you go to the website, you can also see who is going to speak there. And for people doing a lot with Endpoint Manager, actually a lot of persons for the product team from Microsoft will actually be in Switzerland as well. So that will be quite interesting. Later in that month, we also have Experts Live Netherlands again. Big event in Z'Hertogenbosch, the Netherlands. The event has been announced, so we know the date. It's the end of September. And for people who love to speak about technical topics, the call for papers is open, so you can actually submit your session if you want to speak on this event as well. Further on, we have some upcoming events coming up. So in 2 weeks, we have a live Ask Us Anything again. 2 weeks later, again, a webinar. And 2 weeks later than that, again, a live Ask Us Anything. We don't have any speakers to announce yet, but you can, of course, reserve these dates in your agenda already. Again, we are a user group. We encourage people to speak for a user group, even if you're not experienced. So if you want to submit a session, here's our sessionize URL. Please do so. If you're not comfortable on doing it on your own because you're a beginning speaker or you're not really confident, please hook up with us. And we are more than willing to see if we can do a duo presentation or we can help you out. We really want to provide a platform for new speakers to start entering the world of sharing knowledge, because yeah, that's what we love to do, and of course, the more people, the merrier. Which brings us to Jesper. Jesper, thanks for taking the time to present for us, and yeah, you can share your screen and start your session.
I will.
Yeah, I can see your screen, so you're ready to go. Good luck.
Good, but because I can't, my screen disappeared. There you go. Leave him a second. I'll just give it another try. Bear with me for a second. And now I can actually see what I'm doing. Good.
And now for me, the screen is black. Oh, no, I see it now. So it's loading. Yeah, we are fine.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me. It's been it's a great pleasure, and I completely agree that we might not like pandemics and what have we, but being able to speak to users around the world using webinars and stuff like that is just an amazing opportunity, and I'm really happy to be here today. I think we talked about this a few times, and I actually sent in this presentation a year back, and then a lot of things happened, and suddenly Kenneth reached out and said, "Would you like to speak about proactive remediation?" I was like, "Oh yeah, it is one of my favorite topics because I think it's really, really powerful." And as of all other stuff, when you have to present stuff, you have to prepare well, and I spent the last 2 weeks collecting all my proactive remediation knowledge and scripts, so I will share that in a little while. As you know, all devices need to boot, and as I just mentioned a bit earlier, I'm actually spent the last couple of hours being quite nervous. It's always nice to present and meet new people, but this is my first session on Workplace Ninja in Holland. So yeah, and please, I will try to monitor the chat. I hope Kenneth will monitor as well, but otherwise just unmute yourself and ask questions. I have prepared a bunch of slides, but I'd rather not do slides. But again, sometimes it's just nice to have the slides to begin with. And as mentioned, I spent quite some time collecting all the stuff, and it came up with the Kaleidoscope project, which is really just a name I came up with, and it is one of them devices you can look into, and you get all these really nice patterns. And I thought that's a good name for all this proactive remediation or endpoint analytics, which it really is. Because that's just a new way to get all the information you have on your devices. How do you actually monitor your devices and get some knowledge out of this? And so for this session, I actually uploaded all my current scripts to GitHub, and there's a link there. You can go and fetch everything I show during the next hour, an hour and a half. So please go and have a look. I will try to deep dive into how I actually got to this. So the whole proactive remediation is part of the Microsoft Endpoint Manager or Microsoft Intune, and it's part of the Endpoint Analytics and the whole device score setting within Intune. And it's been an absolutely party to get all this information collected. And as people working with Microsoft Intune and only Intune, and maybe not something else like Configuration Manager or similar, we all know there's a few sort of gaps within Intune, but with Endpoint Analytics and Proactive Remediation, I think these gaps are actually filling up quite fast. So just a quick overview. The Endpoint Analytics workspace consists of this, and this slide actually a slide I stole from MMS that just was that a couple of weeks ago, and Avid presented some of the stuff that is coming to Endpoint Analytics and the whole device score thing, and all the blue dots. It's actually something we have today, And there's a few light gray that is coming. And then we have this dark gray one that's actually looking really, really awesome. I have seen some of it. I don't have the possibility to show it because I don't have access to it, but there's coming some really, really interesting things. And he also mentioned something about slicing. And I think that's really, really awesome because having all this data today, sometimes you want to sort of deep dive into, do we have an issue in a certain office or in a certain area in a certain country? And that's actually pretty hard to figure out today. But all that stuff is common. And I just stole this slide as well, and I found that something we've been working with after the pandemic is actually battery health. We've seen some really interesting issues with batteries coming back to the office or getting off the power, and suddenly the batteries collapse. That is actually coming into the analytics by design or by default. I do have a few samples on how to monitor battery health that we can use, and I've seen other people doing some of these scripts as well. And there's an example of this slicing here where we can dive into certain devices and with these scope tags and stuff like that. So yeah, that is just basically all we know for now, but we know there is a lot of stuff coming within this space very soon. So basically, Endpoint Analytics is just getting you a lot of signals and getting you a lot of information about your devices. To start with, we thought that having the great insight into how fast our computers was actually booting up, did we have issues processing group policies and stuff like that. That is not really a big issue anymore because it's actually doable to fix it. For me, one of the biggest sort of benefits about getting our devices into Endpoint Manager or into Microsoft Intune and hence Endpoint Analytics is actually the features that will tell you whatever your devices are ready for Windows 11 or not. And I meet a lot of people and customers saying, well, we are not ready for Windows 11. We're not going there yet. And I was like, I agree. I think Windows 11 is awesome, but we might have to wait for the next version going broad with deployment. But again, being able to see already today which devices we actually have to upgrade and start putting all these devices into budgets and getting it ready before 2025 actually seems to be one of the biggest features for a lot of people I work with, that being able to get that information. We have a lot of customers that is really good at it, been running Configuration Manager for years, and they really like it. For whatever reason, they haven't enabled co-management, which I think they should, and we keep pushing them. And when they start seeing all the information coming into Endpoint Manager or Endpoint Analytics just without doing anything, they often say, well, why didn't we do that like months ago? And I agree. And most of all, the possibility to remediate common IT issues with Proactive Remediation is pretty cool. If someone of you has been working with Config Manager for some time, there's some really nice tools in Config Manager. But I think the features in Intune or Endpoint Analytics, Proactive Remediation is really awesome and it's pretty cool. There's still a few gaps, but I have a feeling that they will be closed very soon as well. So going all into Proactive Remediation and getting warm and getting everything done before I jump straight into some demonstrations and command prompts and what have we. So Proactive Remediation, very short. It's basically being able to have productive users or well-working devices. And also an option to actually see and repair issues that we see that the user haven't seen yet. I did mention a bit earlier about bad batteries. Imagine being able to monitor certain devices and see, well, we have X number of devices with a bad battery. Maybe we should double check whatever those devices are still guarantee, should we sort of get everything started and get the battery replaced, or could we just reach out to the user and say, well, we have noticed your battery in your device is not good. You have to come in next time you're in the office, just pop by the IT service desk and we'll replace the battery for you. That is just an awesome option for an IT department, instead of the user actually shows up Monday morning and everything is broke and he or she needs to do a presentation in 20 minutes and everything is really a bit hectic Monday morning. So being able to do that upfront, I think that is one of the great benefits of all this. I'll show you some of the examples I've been working on, but lately we've been doing a lot of known folder move using Microsoft OneDrive for Business. And for whatever reason, the latest Windows 11 builds seems to block the known folder move process at the very first login. And that can actually be fixed with Proactive Remediation. It requires a reboot and everything is fine after that. So there's some issues about known folder move that we can actually fix with that quite easy. So there's so many great use of Proactive Remediation, and then again, there's an awesome issues or purpose where we can actually misuse Proactive Remediation, at least if you ask me. So there's a few things we need to be aware of. So first, the requirements. The devices needs to be in Intune, meaning they need to be either enrolled to Intune or be co-managed using Configuration Manager with Microsoft Intune. That is a requirement. And because they needs to be in Intune, they also need to be in Azure AD, so they need to be Azure AD joined or hybrid joined. So there's a few things you need to be aware of. There's a link in the slide deck. But again, if you just look up Proactive Remediation requirements, and you'll find all the documents available on Microsoft Docs, and everything is well documented. So going forward, there's also a licensing. I don't call it an issue, but there's a licensing thing, and you need to have one of these licenses. I have a few customers I visit which using Microsoft 365 Business Premium, and they are allowed to use Endpoint Analytics, but they are not allowed to use Proactive Remediation, which is a bit of a shame, but that's how it is today. I know other people as well is actually trying to make Microsoft change that. But again, it's not sort of a big driver, but we try to make it a really valuable solution. But again, be aware of that. If you have Microsoft 365 Business licenses, you are not allowed to use Proactive Remediation, despite you can enable it though, but otherwise you will be under licensed. So what is Proactive Remediation? Basically, it's all about a few PowerShell scripts, but there's some limitations or requirements. Recently, Microsoft added to the documentation that you can only have 200 scripts packages. I think it's hard to come up with 200 different things to do, but if you do, there might be some sort of way to consolidate some of the scripts into single scripts or single packages. However, I'm aware that HP just, I'm not sure it's released or announced, but if you visit admin.hp.com, there's actually an option to enroll or connect the HP portal with Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And then you can start managing HP devices. And it seems to me that they will actually create Proactive Remediation packages within your tenant. And that could probably result in quite a few script packages if you have like 10 different HP models. That is something for me, have to look into and see how HP is actually managing that. But being able just to get 200 scripts just by using Microsoft Intune, I think that will be quite an achievement. However, if you start using Proactive Remediation as a replacement for group policy preferences, I think you could probably easily get there. But I think that is the area where Proactive Remediation is actually being misused. But again, I think there's other means of configuring simple registry keys for that, but that's a whole other story. Then, and this is very important, you have to sign your codes, not assign a code, but use this format called UTF-8. And if that is kind of rubbish to you or bubbles, I'll show you later what it means. It's basically just a file format. And there's this thing that if you do, which I will show you later, a validation of your PowerShell scripts, you might end up having a validation process tells you have to enable UTF-8 with BOM. I'm still to this day quite a bit uncertain what it means. It's all about this BOM is adding a few bits in the start of the file. But I have seen some weird scenarios when these PowerShell scripts is actually safe with the UTF-8 with BOM. So make sure it's UTF-8 only, and it's actually in the documentation as well. And then if you want to output something that you can actually collect from within the Intune portal, you only, well, I say only, but you have 2048 characters. And that is, that should be enough. However, I'm in the middle of migrating a lot of devices from one tenant to another tenant because one company bought the other one. And we needed to find an easy way to add all the current devices to autopilot in the other tenant. And so I was like, hey, wait a minute, let's just do a Proxy Remediation. We'll collect the scripts. But looking at that information you collect when you are going to collect that hash value, it's actually nearly 4,000 characters. So it's not doable. So what do? Well, you have different options. I've seen some people out there done some amazing job. They created some function where you can upload information to the log analytics. I've seen people uploading stuff to SharePoint lists or SharePoint sites. And I even see people upload stuff to Azure Blob Storage. None of them is really that great because most of them will require you to add some sort of login details within the scripts. And there's a reason you shouldn't do that, but I'll get back to that in a second. So there's lots of really useful tips and tricks out there. So in this particular case with the hash values, we sort of sat down and said, what can we do? And one of my colleagues said, well, we could build a web service. So we're actually building a web service. We just throw this values at, and they should be stored in a web server. So whatever is secure enough, I don't know, we will have to look at that. But there's so many ways to collect information from the devices. You just have to find the way that fits you needs best. As I said, don't put secrets in scripts. And this is actually from the official documentation. And it says, consider using parameters to handle secrets instead. And I was like, hey, wait a minute. There's no way you can add parameters to Proactive Remediation scripts. Well, at least not in the console or in the GUI. But I'll show you where it is. Still trying to figure out how to do it, but apparently it's supported and it's fully documented. Doesn't seem to be loading correctly, so I'm still working on that, because one thing is if you have a script and if you actually want to use that script for multiple purposes, you have to change the script and upload it again. If you want to change a parameter, that would be much more useful if you could just change the parameter in the console, say now this limit is not 20, it's now 30, and press save, and everything will start working with the new parameter. So this is something I still trying to figure out how to make work, and I still need to find out if it's something that needs to be applied in a tenant or it should work. But I have a few examples what you can do, look for. And then it's a really good recommendation. Do not put reboots in the remediation scripts. It will basically just screw up everything because we will lose control of everything. So find another way to if you do require a reboot, try to find a way to initiate a reboot, or maybe ask the user to do a reboot afterwards. So if you do that, you ask for issues again, depending on where in the process you're doing that. But enforcing reboots is a really bad idea. So as I said, it can be used and misused for almost everything. There's no limitations beyond your imagination. And of course, you need to be able to do it using PowerShell. But otherwise, it's just free play. And out of the box, Proactive Remediation is 2 scripts. It's a detection script and a remediation script. And you can upload them to the portal. What you could do, you could upload just a detection script without a remediation script. Let's say, as I mentioned, you want to monitor for a bad battery. If you can sort of fix it, how would you? Then you don't need to put in a remediation script. I've seen some cool solutions where the remediation script is actually detecting that that's a bad battery, and then you can create this kind of a pop-up for the user saying you have a bad battery, please contact service desk. I still remain to do that in production because the IT service desk don't want all these calls, and we don't want to ask the user to try to remediate something they don't have any control of. So we rather have the information only and then reach out to the user saying we want to use or offer you to replace your battery. And that is one of the things where when because we can, should we actually tell the user that something is going on, or would there be a different way to do it? I've seen some pretty cool scripts though that sort of figure out how much data is stored in some of the folders. That could be like the recycle bin or temp folders, and then the user can press go delete. Where I think why would I actually bother the user? Would it be easier to do something else? For instance, start looking at the storage settings or storage sense settings, and then just fix those things. So being able to control and see what's going on, in my opinion, is not the same as telling the user everything. We rather have to collect the information and then work with it. So, and this script is actually updated or refreshed every 8 hours-ish. And it's basically a kind of a scheduled task that will run on a certain schedule, but it will check for updated scripts every 8 hours. Cool. So all scripts are executed and stored locally. They're actually downloaded to the C drive, and that is something you need to know, because if your users are local admins, they will be able to gain access to those scripts. And as I just mentioned, the scripts are kind of scheduled tasks. So if you can change those scripts, you might end up being able to run something that you're not meant to, meaning you should probably do something to protect your scripts, or sign them and put some of the measures in place there. Be aware of that. The logs files are stored where all the Intune management extension logs files are. It's quite useful. And all this stuff that's actually going back to Intune can be found in the registry on the local device. And I'll show that in a second. And it's no big deal. It's basically just stored and then it's uploaded whenever that management extension is syncing. So you can actually figure out whatever script is running or not, and what the result is before it actually goes into Intune. If you're trying to figure out what's going on, or if a script fails and you want to try to figure out what's on up and down on that, the information is actually available on the local device. As I mentioned, this is sidecar policies in registry. There's a way to actually extract them if you know the GUID of the script, and I'll show you how to actually see the script and the GUID. And then you also need to know your user GUID, which is kind of it's a bit of a nightmare to actually working with that. So being able to collect all this information from within Intune, it's much easier. But for troubleshooting, being able to do it locally is quite useful. So end of the day, it's all about zeros and ones. As I mentioned, you have two scripts. You have the detection script and the remediation script. Whatever you call the scripts and you upload it to as a detection script, it will be renamed detection. And whatever script you upload, it will be renamed to remediation when it's actually saved. And that is the name you will find on the device as well. So if the detection script returns or exit with a 0, everything is good, thumbs up. However, if you exit the script with an exit 1, means that something is wrong. You have to run the remediation script. So when you build your scripts, all you have to do is just finish up with exit 0 or exit 1, depending on what you want to happen next. So as mentioned, you can easily do an exit 1 even without a remediation script, because that will just tell Intune or the portal that we have some devices with bad batteries. We know we're not able to remediate it, but we can easily find them. And that's the benefit of that. So exit 0 and exit 1 is basically the most important thing to know about remediation scripts. And after that, it's basically just going into to the portal. Any questions so far? Not that I see.
No questions, Jesper, so please continue.
I just swap windows. I believe I have shared a browser. Is that correct? Kenneth, you see the browser?
Yeah, I'm seeing the browser.
Oh,
so,
brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
So basically just going into the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center. This is where you find all the goodies. It's the thing we're looking at is Endpoint Analytics, and it is within the reports. And then you have this in Analytics, Endpoint Analytics. If you haven't enabled it yet, this is where you have to enable it, and it will start collecting data within a day-ish. But otherwise, this has been running for some time. As I mentioned, you have here the startup performance, application reliability, and so on. And I also have this extra resource performance and remote connecting because I have a few Windows 365 devices in my environment. So if you don't see those two, it's probably because you don't have enabled Windows 365 in your environment or in your tenant. So again, this is the one that I just mentioned, which are quite cool and pretty empty for whatever reason. Usually there will be all the devices here showing whatever they are ready for Windows 11 or not. I can't really.
I believe there were some issues globally with some of the information not appearing.
Really?
Jesper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So
well, apparently
we have
there's.
seen it in other tenants as well, so you're not alone.
Cool. I talked to my good friend Per Larsen yesterday. Like, they're upgrading the tenants tomorrow. I was like, oh dear. So apparently there's an update coming out today as well. So yeah. Hey-ho. But let's get into what this is all about, the Proactive Remediation section. And this is basically where you can create your Proactive Remediation. I created all this hello world for today. And it makes sense in a second why I created this many. But basically, you can create a new script here. Workplace WPNinjasNL test, go next. And just having a quick look at this version here, it says number 1, you can't change it. It's being changed every time you do something about the script. And here you can upload your detection script and your remediation script. And basically, you go and browse for it. Let me see, where did I put some scripts? Let's go with the Hello World one. So I have this script here, and it will just hello. So as you can see, you can actually see what's in the script, but you will not be able to edit it. Meaning, if you have to change something, you will have to re-upload the script, and the version will actually change. And again, I have my exit one here. Ooh, sorry. So if my script kind of end up in this area and exit the script with exit one, well, the remediation script will run. And in this case, I could actually add the same script, but it will be renamed as part of the upload here. So should I have 1 or 2 scripts for building this? Well, I've seen some fancy stuff where you can actually read whatever the script is called, detect or remediate. So you could have 1 script controlling both. I prefer to have 2 scripts, so I kind of know what's going on in the detection script, and I know what's going on in the remediation script. So, but again, you could put in some PowerShell magic and just get the name out of the script, and then you could, based on the name, do whatever you want to do, whatever is a detection or remediation. You can run stuff as the user, especially if you want to pop up this notification for the user saying your OneDrive is broken, please reboot. That's pretty cool, or pretty hard to do if you run it as the system. So in this case, we'll run it as a system. And then you can enforce the script signature check, meaning it will run whatever execution policy is on the device, which is restricted, meaning you won't even be able to run signed scripts if it's restricted. So there's a few things you need to be aware of. If you want to do that, you have to change your PowerShell restriction policy to, for instance, all signed, and then you have to add a signature to your script, and you have to add this certificate to your devices, otherwise it won't run. So it's something you probably should do. And then sometimes it's actually useful to say, well, I want to run it in 64-bit of PowerShell, especially if you start working with registry settings. If you want to make 100% sure you are in the right area in registry and not end up in a 32-bit area in about 64-32, you could enforce it to run 64-bit PowerShell. So depending which kind of scripts are running, what is it you want to achieve. So again, most often I probably end up having something like this. Then you can add scope tags, and you can add an assignment. And the good thing here, which hasn't been there forever, but today you'll be able to add filters, which is pretty cool. Filters for the win everywhere. That's good. And then you can also change how often your script should run. Let's say you want to monitor the battery health, as we talked about a bit earlier. Would it be useful to actually check for bad battery every single day or every single hour? Probably not. What I usually do, I go daily, and then I probably say, well, you should do this every 7 days or every 14 days, whatever, because might not take that many resources to run the scripts, but if you have up to 200, there might be a bit of a lag on those devices while these scripts are running. So if it makes sense to run it daily or even hourly, do it. But many scripts won't need to run more than 1 or twice a week. So keep that in mind, how your script will run. Just be aware that default is daily, and it will run sometime during the day on all your devices, and that is quite useful if you just want to collect some information quick, but you can always change it afterwards. Cool. There you go. And then you do create, and you will get this package. I'll just remove the assignment for this. Cool. And then in a little while, you will have the next one. So there you go. And it does say it's not deployed. This is also where you can see what's going on with your scripts. And you can actually open up, let's take this one, which is a built-in script. As you noticed, it's actually released by Microsoft. They are adding 2 scripts to every single tenant. You can't delete them, can't remove them. You can make them unassigned, and you can create your own. And this is the information you get. How many devices with issues or how many devices without issues, which is quite useful. And the one down here, remediation status, is actually quite useful, that you actually, in this tenant, I have one device that keeps failing. So even if I run the detection script and decide to run the remediation script, it keeps failing. So at next one, I say, well, we might have run this script, but it seems that it keeps failing. And that is something you can then start looking into. For this particular case, I know what's wrong, and without saying anything bad about anybody, it's just a bad script. So when you do the scripts and you do some tests, this is sort of my scripts. And as I mentioned, you can say, well, only show me script with issues, because that's the one that's actually interesting. And looking at this, there's not much you can see. But if you just go to the columns, there's actually a handful of columns that is not enabled. I just enabled them, all of them, just for the purpose of this. And then you'll actually see you have some information. Pre-remediation detection. Error here. So there's an error in my script. And to start with, I was like, why do I get an error on this particular device? And again, I also have a remediation error. So on this device, I'm not able to fix this thing. And then if you sort of dig into what's going on here, it's actually because this particular device is a service book. And it runs with whatever Microsoft installed it when they released it. And if I open up my Office application, I'll actually see that Office this PC is running is from the store, and it doesn't have this service. So the script is actually created in a way that it checks if Office is installed, it checks for a particular executable, and then it actually runs a completely different executable. And then you get this error because that file is trying to run is not available. So this is just an example of bad programming. However, I probably should have upgraded my Office on this device to a normal or standard Office 365 application. But again, it's all about being able to control your PowerShell script. So again, if I just select all of them here, so being able to see all this information is not that good. I have to actually open every single one to get an overview, which is not necessarily that good. So being able to read this information somewhere else could be useful. Meaning we probably have to go back and say, let's take my Hello World 10 here. Unfortunately for me, there's no issues. It's all about the script because the script doesn't actually exit a one. If I just go in here, you will see I decided to put in some information in the output, which is basically the script name, the language, and the PowerShell language, because that is something you need to be aware of. In this case, PowerShell is running when this script was executed in full language mode. If you are running application control, app logger, or similar things, you might end up in a situation where you end up in your PowerShell environment running in what is called restricted language mode. And then there's a whole bunch of new issues arising. And again, I've added the keyboard layout and the computer name. So this is a way to structure the output. What I could do now, I could actually say, let's say I want to upload this information to Log Analytics. So I have to decide, should it be the client within the Proactive Remediation Script that actually connects to the Log Analytics workspace and hand over the information, or should we create some kind of a script or process that actually collect the information straight from Intune and upload it to Log Analytics? And again, it's all about how you build your output. So if you know, like every script called M10 comes with this specific formatting, it's quite easy to actually read it and import it into something else. But again, that's a decision. If you want to upload something, for instance, to Log Analytics or similar, and you are concerned about adding these credentials into your scripts, well, you could probably upload the information to Intune and then collect the information from Intune. But again, you still have this limitation of 2048 characters, so might not be the best solution. But again, you should consider how and what you are exporting to Intune. If I just go back to the one that I was complaining about, the built-in Office one, and just say, just have a look at that. It says Office is not present on this device. Cool, I can work with that. But this message running is not that useful, to me at least. Well, something is running. I have to go back and find out what is actually running. So restart stop Office C2R service. Okay, it's running. Okay, I assume it's running. So again, depending how and what will you actually return back to Intune. Is that something you want to use? Or is it more like what I want is this. This is the overview. I just want to make sure that everything is green and then control the few devices that is not green, or having this resuming or failed remediation statuses. So that is pretty much Log Analytics from within the portal. So what if I needed to actually get a better overview of all this information I collect? And just see, is this window shared? I hope it is. Just looking at Kenneth, he's nodding. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, we can see the screen. So yeah.
I sat down, and this is not a script I'm particularly proud of because it's a bit of a prototype. But just to try to figure out how to actually get access to all this information, I sat down with Bing and a bit of Google and a bit of PowerShell, and then I started to figure out how I can actually read this information. So what I did, I created this small script that is basically just showing all my proactive remediation packages in this grid view. And if I only want the hello scripts, the hello world scripts, in this case, I select all of them and I go, okay. and it starts reading all the events from those and actually shows everything in this grid view. And this is where it actually get quite useful, because now I can actually start sorting on particular outputs. I can go up here and say, well, where is it? Detection status, and that column is called fail. No. Let me have a quick look again. Oh, great. There's no detection state called failed, which is good. But again, the whole grid view thing is actually quite useful, and I can dig down into what's going on. So let's say I wanted to show, if I just go cancel this one and then go into a more production tenant. And that'll be that one. Let's say I want to just, in this case, have the battery health Proactive Remediation Script. It had 280 entries. And now if I go detection status, add fail, I'll have, luckily enough, rather short list of devices. And again, here you'll see some of the issues we see, because I actually have some pre-remediation detection errors. I was like, why do we have that? Well, for now I know, but I'll come back to that in a second. But in this column, I actually have a quite good view of these devices, which is quite hard to get when you are in the console. But these devices is actually protected, and the script is running in this, what's it called? It's not running in full language mode. And because it's not, there's some VMI queries I'm not allowed to do. So that's a different thing. So all VMI queries should be converted to the CMIC, I believe it's called, queries, but we haven't done that because those queries doesn't return the information we need. But that is why we get this divided by 0 message. Well, as far as we found out anyway. So we'll have a look at that and find a way. But as I mentioned a bit earlier, there will be battery health information within Intune, so we haven't been that busy trying to figure out how to solve it. But we know there's an issue with that particular script. However, in this case, I now have in the 4 machines that I positively know that they have a bad battery. Should I tell the user? No, but I should probably do something to start remediating that process. But that cannot be done with Proactive Remediation. You have to get into the device and change the device or get it changed by the vendor. So that's one thing. And then I did mention a bit earlier about what you can what if you wanna upload something to like log analytics or similar. Should you put login information into your scripts? And I say no, you shouldn't. However, if I go into the Graph Explorer and go get beta and this path, which is basically the same graph path that I use in the script that I show you, and go run query, I get a similar view of all my Proactive Remediation scripts. And let's just find the one that is called M10, which we just had a look at. So this is basically information that you know about the script. If you, I'll show in a minute, export the the full package using PowerShell and Graph API, you will be able to export the scripts as well. But the ones I want to point your attention to is actually those two, because it seems there's detection script parameters and detection script remediation parameters. And if I just go copy and search for this in Bing, which is quite interesting, and scroll down. No, was the wrong one. That one. And scroll down here. You will see this. However, when I actually create this JSON file with this information, I haven't found a way to do it. There's one thing with this particular site is if I just go back and I just want to point you to where it says Microsoft. If we go this one instead and scroll down to the same one, which is here. Oh, is that the same one? Let me see. Because there's an error on that page. Okay. There should be just here. There should be a hash value. If you try to do this, it will fail. But depending where and which site you're looking at, you actually get an incorrect answer. You can see it up here. You have a similar OD data type, which start with a hex value. It's actually missing down here. But I tried, and I promise I tried so many different things, and it doesn't fail. I managed to import all this information correctly, but when I export it back, as you just saw in my Graph Explorer view, if I scroll down to number 12, oh, it's gone. But again, they're empty. So I'm trying to figure out how to use detection script parameters, because I think it's quite cool that you can actually add parameters to a script. You can sign it once instead of sign it multiple times. So back to the script. As I mentioned, I've been building all these scripts, and building a PowerShell script, looking at the one that Microsoft released, it can be quite simple. You don't need as much as I do. But this is basically my template. I try to fill in as much as I can with description and the parameters and stuff like that. So why do I use parameters when I can't use them? It's just because when I can start use parameters, I would prefer to do that. So everything that sort of changed, that could be a threshold on the battery health. I think my script is checking if the battery is above 40%. But it's actually a parameter. So if a customer says, hey, we want a 30% or we want 50%, it should be fairly easy to do with a GUI. It's not yet. So the script here is my Hello World script. It actually does quite a lot. It has this do test, got 11 different sort of outputs. And in this case, I also have down here a small function that will actually create a log file. See, if you're actually using these Proactive Remediation scripts and needs more information than is available in the 2000 characters, what you could do, you could run this small function and actually put it in the Microsoft Intune extension log folder. And if you then go into Intune, you will be able to collect all the log information from a device, including this Hello World log file. So that's just a little trick. If you need it, that could be the battery health script I mentioned. If you want to add further information about battery, that could be serial numbers, that could be whatever battery information is available, you could put it in a log. And in this case, I have 4 devices. All I need to do is go into Intune and collect the information from those 4 devices to be able to research deeper into how can I get one of these batteries replaced. Another thing I always I add this little thing that where I actually check whatever my script should run in 64-bit PowerShell. You can say if I do something and I forget to configure the PowerShell to run in 64-bit and then get a wrong result, you'll end up having this weird script that maybe is not working, and you get all these weird error messages, and you might even run remediation scripts for no reason. So I sort of started putting this little test in my script. So when I run it, I decide whenever I run it, should this be run 64-bit or not. As I mentioned, I have a few parameters, and then we have that's the script here, and then all I do is basically adding this string to a log file, and then I build it up with this begin, process, and end, and everything I do I put into these tries, and if any of these fails, I will end up in my catch down here, where I actually put my error message and put an error message that will be collected from Intune as well. So just going through, this is various scripts or tests I've done for this. So I actually uploaded these scripts 11 different times. And in this case, if I do this, do a write output in 2 lines. So which line would actually be the one I see in Intune? You should hope for both, but no, it's the last one. If you do something else and you want to do clever stuff and put in line, new line or carry return, well, it's only the last bit that will be collected by Intune. Again, should I use write host, write output? Depends. However, I'll show you why you should use write output in a second. Again, if you try to do multiple lines, it will only have the last bit of that line in the output. You could do new line. It doesn't seem to be working. This one will kill it as well. Then, of course, you can do write error message, meaning my Intune will collect the error, and you will see that on the script in the console. Write verbose doesn't make sense at all because the script is not called with the verbose. However, the script needs to be configured so you can use verbose if you want to use it. So what I do is actually, I often use verbose for testing purposes. Again, these 2, test 7 and 8, will not return anything to Intune. Write output, write error will get 2 columns in Intune, which is quite cool. And this is my 10, which I showed a bit earlier, where I actually build up the string with all the information. And this is kind of the test 11, where I call my script or my function to put all this information into a log file. And if I just pop into this one, I have Josephine running here. And if I go into this path, can I do zoom? Yes, I can. And I do it here. You'll see the log files for all the Intune collection. In this case, if I go notepad hello world log file, this is where I put all my information. So in this case, you'll see some information. You'll see the log file I'm using, the script file. It's called detect, which folder is actually located in. This is the GUID for the script, and the last bit here is the version number. So you might end up having somewhere this about 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, depending on how many times you actually changed it. Does it run in 64-bit PowerShell? Doesn't say anything. Should it be running? I think I've done a small error here. But is it running in 64? No, it doesn't. Is it running elevated? Yep, it is. And you can see it's actually running as NT authority. So just by adding all this stuff to a local file will actually give you some insight how these scripts are performing. So I highly encourage you to just try to create a log file and say, so what I need to know. I need to know which user, I need to know which folder, I need to know whatever build, whatever language, the full language mode is here. And then I can add all the lines I want in the world to my log file, which could be quite useful. It's not that good though, if you have to collect all these log files from hundreds of the devices. Again, you can go Notepad, Agent, Executor Log, and this is where you will see the scripts. As I mentioned, they are saved in the IME cache health script, and you can see the version number here. It's actually 5. And then you'll see the command line here. So this is what's actually being called when the script is executed. So if you have an issue, that could be if you change the setting for enforcing the certificate. What's it called? The certificate, whatever it's starting up. Well, the execution policy here will actually be either restricted or it won't even be there, and it will run with whatever the default execution policy is on the device. So that is something you have to look into and figure out how to control in your environment. So again, if your users are standard users instead of local admins, well, you are more safe. If they are local admins, they can gain access to this. But again, if they're already local admins, but it's not about the user, it's actually about if somebody else or something else is trying to get this privilege escalation. But again, it's primarily if the user is not local admin, and then the files are protected.
Yes, Frank, we have a question about that from Oktay, who is asking whether those log files can contain sensitive or exploitable info by default.
Well, you could probably argue that if you shouldn't put secrets in your files, you should add them as a parameter, right? Well, Microsoft needs to do something about this, because if this parameter was done like that, and that last bit is a secret, yeah, it would be there. So I hope, of course, that Microsoft will, when I figure out how this parameter thing is working, I hope that we do something like save the secrets or save the parameter. But again, it's all about logging. But I haven't seen anything. Well, at least not much. I had the ID of the script, but I also have the ID of the user in here. Whatever that can be exploited. I'm not aware of anything though. But the parameter thing could be interesting, how that would end up in the log file. But unfortunately, I don't know. Did that answer the question?
I think so. Oktay is typing, so let's give him a minute. Thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about the parameters he tells. Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Parameters is a bit funny. They're well documented, but nobody can actually show us how they work. I did mention about all this stuff is going into registry, and you will be able to find it here. That is this one which says _5. That's the one for the group the setting for the Office activation. And then you can start looking at, so, well, how can I use that? But again, if you run this small script, this is actually the information that is stored in that string. It's basically a bit of a JSON. But no, that's not the right. But again, this is my my output, and I have the error code. So again, this is information that is already in the machine even before it goes to Intune. So in a troubleshooting scenario, those information will be available straight from a test device. So keep that in mind. Cool. Last thing. If I go back into my preferred editor, which in this case is Visual Studio Code, there's a few things I promised to show. One of them is down here in the very bottom. It says UTF-8. What I can do, I can go save with encoding, and then you have this UTF with bump. Don't use that. All your scripts need to be saved with UTF-8. And that is a requirement, especially if you start signing your scripts. But I've seen some weird scenarios where we actually was putting scripts into a software package. When they run with UTF-8 with BOM, they just failed for no particular reason. Seems like they're more robust without BOM. But I asked the PowerShell guru I work with and said, well, you should always use with BOM. It's like, well, maybe, but I stopped doing that. Another thing you need to be aware of is this one down here, the line, end of line. Should it be LF or CRLF? Well, I tried to Google it and I ended up with LF. Doesn't say anything about in the documentation in this particular thing, whatever I should use either. So that's just quickly about the encoding. So one thing I always do when I've done with my script, I go in Visual Studio Code and go down here and do this Invoke script analyzer, which is basically what Visual Studio does as you write, or Visual Studio Code. But if I just do this, you'll see I have some scripting arrows or validation arrows, and there's this white space. So line 21, if I just pop out to line 21, yep, true. And if you can see there's actually trailing spaces. It's fairly easy to fix. You just type in, press F1 and try. There you go. Now they are gone. And then what I often do, I go F1, and then I select convert indentation to spaces. Should it be spaces or should it be tabs? I don't know. All my scripts are with spaces. And as you can see down here next to UTF-8, it's actually set up to use 4 spaces every time I press tab. Again, that's just another thing. So if I just go save and do it one more time, well, what? Didn't press save. There you go. So what are the other ones? Well, that's the one I mentioned about, should I use write output or write host? Well, in this case, you should definitely use write output. Write host is only if you really mean it. It's not really an error, it's a warning. But again, when we start talking about running PowerShell in in constrained language mode, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work. If I just pop into my the battery thing, it's here. You'll see what I do. I use get sim instance of the battery, but down here I actually use get VMI object. So if I actually try to run these 3 lines on a device that is not running in full language mode, it will fail, and that's some of the errors you saw in the portal. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do and validate, and you learn as you go. And then I basically just do some really nasty math. Some of it will work in constrained language mode, and somewhat of it won't. And that's why I start putting this little band on top of my scripts. Is this verified? Nope. Is it constrained language? It does say yes. It should say no. But again, it's all about what scenario you have in your environment, whatever you are required to be able to run these scripts in this particular with these particular restrictions. One last thing I wanted to show you is if I just pop into this window, there's this bloke from Australia that is building this Intune Manager. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend to go and have a look, because what I can do, I can actually read all my health scripts in here, and I can work with them. So let's say I want to get rid of the one I just created. Well, go delete. And then I want to add the script I had for M12, as I call it. If I select that folder, there's one. I go import. And it will actually import this script. So now if I go back to the portal, I have another script available. If I just quickly pop into the download folder and go with Notepad, and I scroll down here, you'll see I've actually added the detection parameters. So now if I go back to, that didn't work. To the Graph Explorer and run the query one more time and scroll down, I should have there it is. See, this is the new script I just uploaded. However, the parameter is empty. So that is something I have to look into the coming weeks, figure out how to actually start working with parameters and whatever it's supported or how you do it. So the Graph Explorer is quite useful for trying to figure out what's going on. You can do the same thing as I showed you with the script, where you can extract all your Proactive Remediation scripts and export it. And then just to conclude that, yeah, Mickey K, thanks for sharing the link. It's pretty cool. It's an awesome script, and it's some pretty awesome work he's done with it. So just to finish off, I think my time is about up, and I'll be happy to hang around. I think proactive remediation is extremely powerful. You can do, as I mentioned, everything, and you could easily misuse it. As I mentioned, you can have up to 200 scripts. So should you create a proactive remediation script with like one registry entry, I probably wouldn't. I'd rather do it with 10, or I'd rather put it in some sort of a software package or something if I need to configure something that is not doable in a policy. Then I really encourage you to consider how often these scripts are executed. They do take a bit of resources, and again, how often do you need to check if, for instance, a battery is bad? There could be a few issues where you want to check every day. I have a few examples in the GitHub. Again, consider how you want to handle the collected data. Should the client upload it to somewhere? Should I collect it in Intune and export it from Intune into some solution? And should I actually tell the users something is wrong with your device? You have a bad battery, or you have a lot of files, you're running out of space, whatever. Most cases I've been involved with, we haven't shown users that much. I'm aware of a single one where we actually asked the user to restart the device. That's the one with remediating the known folder move for OneDrive, because that we have to kill all the OneDrive server processes, and the only way to get them back is actually a reboot, because we can only tell which one, we can't tell which one is actually the right one to restart. So, but otherwise, I hardly never show any users that information. So proactive remediation script is easy. It's extremely easy. You can do it with one-liners. It's all the error handling that is actually hard, making sure you get the right information, the right amount of information, and decide whether it should go to Intune, to a log file, to log analytics, or whatever. That is actually the hard bit here. Again, follow the documentation, and as I showed, always validate your scripts. I actually didn't show you how to test it in constrained language mode. There's some examples in the slide deck. There's also examples on GitHub. So you'll learn a lot by forcing you to run in constrained language mode, and you probably have a few script needs to be changed, which is fun. And as always, you should sign your scripts. That is one of the ways to protect yourself from this. But again, consider where you are, in which environment you have. Are you use a local admin? Are they high-risk users? Are they in high-risk environments, and so on? But I highly recommend always sign any script or package you build. That is just something we need to be able to do. If you don't do it now, I don't think we ever gonna do it. And I think that was pretty much what I have collected today. I hope everything was okay, and there's a few maybe new things, or if you want to ask a few questions about some of the stuff I showed, please let me know.
Awesome. So much information. Thanks for that, Jesper. Really cool. Hey, maybe you mentioned like you have a GitHub repository with all kinds of scripts. Is that correct?
Yep.
So maybe you can share that with us in the chat.
It's actually in the slide deck as well.
Yeah.
But I guess
Okay.
you weren't fast enough with the barcode, right?
Indeed. Hey, and maybe if you can share the slides, I can share them with the audience as well for their review. But yeah, for now, yeah, a big thanks for your time, of course, and your interesting session. We might need to do a follow-up session maybe in a while if you have found out all the issues that you are struggling with at the moment. So
yeah, it's primarily parameters that
yeah.
I really wanted to get into, and then of course I think every time I build a script, for a particular case, I learn something new.
Awesome.
So that's the good part. And again, constrained language modes is just a bloody nightmare. But again, you learn a lot by actually testing it, and then because I log it, I might end up in that situation 1 out of 10. But I still test it just to make sure, because I use my scripts with multiple customers and multiple scenarios. So I like to test it and validate them and try to document.
But you can clearly see that you have really thought of how to document stuff, do the error handling first, and then use that as in a framework to actually develop your further scripts, which is actually a really nice way on how to work with this kind of solutions. Again, let's hope the proactive remediations becomes available for a much wider audience as well, hopefully in the future.
Actually, I didn't mention, but when I start building a script, I always start by building the detection script and then actually deploy it without a remediation script just to get feedback. Does it work? And then while we are collecting data, I try to build the remediation bit, which is basically a copy of the detection script, just adding the remediation bits, whatever that should be.
Indeed.
And that actually works quite well.
Great. So again, thanks. Thanks everyone for listening as well. The recording of this meeting will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Our next live Ask Us Anything is on June 14, so that's in 2 weeks. We will announce the next speaker soon via social media. Again, thanks to the sponsors. Have a nice evening. Thanks for attending, and hopefully until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.